welcome to another episode of GTV. So this is the channel where you learn more about business tips, freelancing tips, and I am so honored to have a guest today from Singapore, and his name is Joe Escobedo. Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
Hey, Ginger, doing good. Thanks.
Great, great. So, Joe, you are the author of Asian Growth Stories, right? And you're also a consultant for Fortune 1000 companies. Can you tell us more about yourself?
Yes, so you're absolutely right. I'm an author, consultant, trainer, all that fun stuff. I'm also a professor. I teach for some of the universities here in Singapore. So that's kind of the day job. And then as I was mentioning earlier, I have two young kids. So in addition to all of the titles I just mentioned, I'm also a cook for the kids and also,
Yeah, same here, same here. Okay, so Joe, the reason why I reached out to you, I think one of the things that my viewers would like to know more about is personal branding. So I know that there are a lot of startup founders also who are watching this vlog. And as a startup founder, you'll see a lot of those people we idolize, like Mark Zuckerberg, the Elon Musks, and the Jeff Bezoses, right, of the world. And they usually build their own brand as well as build their businesses, right? So what are your thoughts on personal branding, and what are your thoughts on startup founders building their own personal brands in relation to also building the brand of their businesses?
So that's a very good question. I think it really depends on what your business is doing. I think it definitely does not hurt if you have a personal brand. I think it can help in a lot of different ways. But I would definitely emphasize this more if you have a service-based business versus a product-based business. I think it can still help in the product-based business, but usually it's very helpful in the very beginning stages when no one knows who your corporate brand is, but they know you. So I've seen some companies who are focusing on the product side, build their personal brand at the beginning, but as the company grows, they'll focus more on the corporate brand or the product brand and less on the personal brand. So I think you see that with a lot of different organizations, even the people you just mentioned. I think, Zuckerberg and Bezos and like that. When you saw all the interviews at the very beginning, it was those guys. They were the only ones doing it. I think as you go forward, you see slightly less of them and more of the kind of the brand and more of the other different stakeholders within the company. So I think if you're a smaller organization, I think it could definitely help. But I think as you scale up, a lot of organizations are trying to make that shift towards kind of the corporate or product brand.
Okay, so why is that important? Like, what does that do to help the business?
I think it helps in terms of scalability. So the problem with a personal brand business, unless you're the Gary Vee or the Neil Patels of the world, it's very difficult to scale a business if it's your own name. So even I'm having the same difficulties as well, because when I started the company, it was just my name. So I'm slowly starting to shift away to my name to like a corporate entity. But it's a bit tricky because a lot of people still know me. The network is still there. So, but I think when you scale to a certain point, it's easier if you have a corporate brand versus an individual brand, particularly if you're going to sell the company. I think it's much easier when you're talking about investors. They look at, obviously, not only who the founders are, but as the company grows, they want to make sure that the company brand itself is strong enough.
Okay, so if I want to start like building the brand of my startup, not necessarily just myself, even for my business, what should I do? What are the first few steps that I need to take?
I mean, I think a lot of times people they place too much emphasis on the corporate brand, particularly at the beginning. So when I started the company a few years ago, I didn't even have a proper website. I didn't have a proper, a name. It was just my company. It was just my actual name for the first couple of years, but we did quite well. So I think that a lot of times, a lot of people spend too much time on the logo or business cards because it makes them feel good, but doesn't really help the business. So one thing that I would rather people do is focus on really understanding who is the customer or who is the target audience I'm trying to serve. And it sounds very easy, but it's very difficult. So I'll give you a situation. When I started the business, I was trying to go after startups. I was going after enterprise. I was going after government, nonprofits, and I was just all over the place. It was terrible. So one thing that I tried to do was focus in and say, okay, who do I really know? Who do I have expertise in? And who can I really help? And then I peeled it back and I said, okay, I work in B2B space, B2B marketers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hone in on that. And I think that made a huge difference. Um, I think the business cards and the brands and the beautiful websites come a little bit later. I think first you need to clearly understand who is the target audience you're trying to serve and how can you actually help them. It sounds like common sense, but it's honestly very, very difficult to do at the beginning.
That's true. Like, just to share, Joe, like a lot of the businesses also here are very traditional. So they started like with mass marketing, really. Like, I want to target everyone. So in your case, like, how do you get to that point where you know which segment to really target? I know you mentioned like look at your expertise, like look at where you have the network. So maybe that's one. But what if you don't have a network? Like, what if I'm just selling like bread, for example? Like a lot of people love baking nowadays. So if I want to sell bread, so how do I go about it?
I think it's a very good point. And your kind of your target audience may shift or may pivot at times. But I think one thing that came very, very helpful to me is just talking to people. So I speak with
Okay.
lots of people, whether it's through my podcast, whether it's through Kitchen with Coffee. And I listen and I find out, okay, what are some of the things that, generally upset them or frustrate them? Or, I find out if I'm starting a bread shop, who do I know that really loves bread and eats bread on a regular basis? I would connect the dots in my head, or I would jot it down after the meeting, and I say, okay, I met with 5 people today. 3 out of the 5 are huge bread fans. They eat it at least once a day. They might be a good target audience for me to actually sell to. So I
Yeah.
think it's difficult. I mean, you could do research. You can do Google research and understanding trends and keywords and stuff like that. But I think it's always better when you're actually on the ground. You're speaking with people and finding out what are their preferences, what are their frustrations, and then that'll
Yeah.
bring up ideas which you had never thought about before. So you can be talking with people and they say, okay, um, people may be like, oh, gluten-free breads, for example. Maybe something we never thought about, but it's something that kept popping up in the conversations. And I think that's something that could help steer the business in the right way.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I noticed that a lot of people they skip talking to customers entirely because they're so focused on like I need to launch this product, I need to launch this website and it has to be perfect or I need to create a perfect bread for so that people can buy it and they skip that entire process of talking to customers. So that's very important. So aside from that, Joe, have you seen any like mistakes that businesses or entrepreneurs or even people who want to get into business like do and fail to do when it comes to branding?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is thinking that the brand is for them personally, um, when really the brand is something that should enable or help your audience. Um, so the simplest example is like the content you put out. So you could be on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, and you can instantly tell the people who are putting out content just for themselves
Yeah.
versus for the audience. So I think that makes a huge difference when you are not only building your kind of brand, but also sharing the content. Um, it's got to be from a place where sorry, there's 2 types of content really. There's
Yeah.
selfish content and there's selfless content. And I think most people focus on very much selfish content. So
Yeah.
content that serves them, that makes them look great. But at the end of the day, no one cares. Your customers don't care. They only care about what makes them feel good. So I think focusing on the latter, like selfless content, what kind of tips, what kind of resources, what kind of entertaining things can you give to your audience that'll make them feel better or happier or less frustrated? Focus on that and less on, okay, here's how great I'm going to look in this new post. Here's how beautiful or here's how smart I'm going to look. I think too
Yeah.
many people overemphasize that, and then it ends up backfiring a lot of the time.
That's true. That's true. So selfish and selfless content. It's really about adding value or giving value to others. So Joe, in during these times, like during the pandemic, a lot of businesses like popped up and everything has changed. Even the behaviors of our customers have changed. So do you have like best practices? I don't know. I know this is like just recently the pandemic just hit us recently. So I'm not sure as to how much knowledge have you acquired already, like through experimentation or through the different things that you've done with your the companies that you help out with. But have you seen anything that could actually help us small business owners?
Well, I think that, I have not seen, I've not massively changed the way I've done business pre and post. I think what I have been trying to do, you hear it a lot, being more empathetic, but I think understanding that everyone has been impacted in some way or the other. A lot of times we think about it from our own point of view. We think, oh, I've been inconvenienced because my kids' schools are closed, or my business has been running slowly, and I'm feeling the pain. But it's so we dwell on that too much, I think. And I think that, what, we have to understand that everyone is going through it. So everyone's business has been hit in some way or the other, or inconvenienced by the pandemic. So I think that understanding that people are hurting in some way or another, and being more empathetic, and also a lot of times we're becoming more risk adverse. So I'll
Yeah.
give an example. Pre-COVID, like, I didn't require that much, approvals on budgets and things like that. They just got, approved
Yeah.
pretty easily. But nowadays, it's not the case at all. There's a lot of, internal justifications in terms of, why do you actually need to spend this money? What's going to be the outcome of it? It's a lot more work internally on the
Yeah.
customer side. So I think it's something we need to remember, that they're internally under a lot of pressure to make sure that they're spending, money in the right places. And as a result, that they're scrutinizing a lot of the,
Yeah.
proposals or products that you're putting forth. So I think keeping that whole thing in mind can help manage some anxiety, because I think a lot of small businesses are facing a lot of anxiety, myself included,
Yeah.
um, during this time. And I think that's something to constantly remind ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. So I just want to know, like for the big companies that you help out with, Joe, is there a significant pressure to move budgets from brand awareness to sort of like conversion? Have you seen that, or is it still the same cut when it comes to like reach versus like consideration versus like conversion?
I think the bottom has definitely dropped out of a lot of organizations. So yes, a lot of times they're
Yeah.
focused maybe 30-40% of their investment and resources on, brand building. I think it's definitely dropped quite a lot. So a lot of them are focusing on not only demand gen and lead generation, but also kind of what's actually going to close. So I was
Yeah.
speaking with a senior marketer at a big tech company last week, and she said, before we were responsible for how many qualified leads could we bring to the business.
Yeah.
Now we're responsible for how many of those actually close.
Those.
So the
Okay.
quality of the leads. So it's putting more and more pressure on people internally. And I think as a result, when they're looking at, partners, um, they're not so much focusing on brand awareness, which, you know,
Yeah.
is a bit of a, bit of a mistake at this point. But I think that
Yeah.
I understand where they're coming from. My
So
my
sorry
daughter.
about that.
Oh, no worries. That's yeah. My daughter, it happened the same thing the other day. I was on a client call. My daughter just popped her hand and
I
was
know.
like, "Daddy, what are you doing?" It's like, yeah,
Sorry,
all good.
Joe. Yeah, we can start with like, yeah, what were you saying about like moving, yeah, moving the budgets? I can cut that part.
Yeah, no, I say keep it. I think that, like I said, a lot of times they're focusing less on building brand awareness,
Yeah.
which was the hot topic like last year and the year before. Now it's very much like, how can I generate more leads, and how can those leads actually close? So it's
Yeah.
putting more and more pressure on marketers to actually close the leads. And same thing with sales. They're getting increased pressure. The quotas haven't shifted much. So they're under a lot of pressure as well. I think a lot of people are under a lot of pressure to
Yeah.
make sure that the company stays afloat. Otherwise, there's things like layoffs and budget cuts and all kinds of, not so fun things.
Yeah. So, and it's the fourth quarter. So I am assuming like a lot of people are pressured to reach their targets, especially during these months. Yeah. So, Joe, any last tips that you want to share with businesses here in the Philippines?
So yeah, maybe I can share my experience, because I've worked with I have team members in the Philippines, my VA and some of my other team members. And I think one thing when I was going through in terms of like LinkedIn profiles. So for
Yeah.
example, this is something I really look at when I'm deciding on who I want to work with. So I think first is actually having a updated not resume, updated profile in terms of what you're actually working on. I see a lot of people with outdated ones. They'll just put VA, but doesn't put exactly what they're doing. So I
Yeah.
think specify what it is you do, and don't try to put everything. I think too many VAs or too many folks try to put like, oh, I do Facebook ads, I do SEO, I do blah blah blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so many different things. It's like no, doesn't matter how good you are. No one is that good at 20 different things. It's just impossible. So really narrow it down and say, okay, what is it that you do better than most people? Focus in on that, at least in your profile.
Yeah.
And not only that, make sure that you're sharing content around that. So this is the big mistake that I see a lot of people missing out on is they're saying, look, I'm a specialist in SEO, for example, but then I don't see,
Yeah.
the profile optimized. I don't see tips for it. I don't see anything that
Anything.
would justify. So for me, I just scroll right over it. I'm like, it's a next for me. The only people that I actually stop and look at is say, have they have updated profile that specifies what their specialty is? Are they sharing relevant content on a regular basis?
Yeah.
And it's not just like a bunch of, inspirational tips, unless like you're an inspirational motivational speaker. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But unless that's your day job, I would focus less on that and more in terms of like strategies. Going back to the SEO thing, what are some strategies for 2021 that businesses in your space can try to implement? I think those are people that really stand out to me when I'm looking for partners in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And I was, yeah, I find that a bit frustrating as a customer or as a partner and
Yeah.
saying, okay, because there's a lot of amazing talent in the Philippines. I truly believe that, but I think it's not showcased in the way that it probably could. I think one who, and she's incredible at this, is Virginia Batista.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not sure. Yeah,
Virginia. Yeah.
yeah. So everyone knows Virginia. I've interviewed when I was working at Forbes. I've interviewed Virginia multiple times, um,
Yeah.
and the reason I did that is because she is one of those people that puts together incredible content that is very specific to her target audience. That is very deep. That is very helpful. I saw that, and I reached out to her. She was one of the few people. So I got flooded with pitches when I was working at Forbes. She was one of the few people I saw, and okay, I want to interview you.
Mm.
And then I interviewed again and again, and we're still friends to this day. So never underestimate kind of the platforms where your target audience is, and then make sure you're providing relevant content for them on a regular basis. Otherwise, it's very easy for them to just gloss over your profile and say, okay, that's it. Last thing I would say is have a portfolio.
Mhm.
It could be as simple as, if you're a web designer, have some screenshots of before and after websites you've done. If you are, an SEO, you take a screenshot of a ranking of a
Yeah.
product that you've done. I think all these things can help visualize, because it's very difficult if you're, unless you have the proof to support it. Um, it's very difficult for the potential client to really comprehend what you do.
That's true. Very good tips, Joe. I learned a lot about branding and personal branding from you. So, do you have anything that you want to share with the audience? Do you have like speaking engagements, or where can they contact you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always speaking. I think every Thursday I host a Cup of Joe Live, which is live on LinkedIn. So yeah, you can definitely find me there. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. So every Thursday, yeah, you can join that. Ask me any questions. I usually do topics around marketing, sales, and branding. So yeah, pop by, say hi, ask me any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn, and yeah, happy to chat.
Yay! Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you once again for sharing knowledge and your tips. So I'll put all of those links in the show notes below for people who want to contact Joe. That's it for today. Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Take care.